Sorry, I was a little late. Was multitasking and totally forgot to switch over to Zoom. So I appreciate everybody being here. Today is the family call. I'm going to hop right into it. I'm super excited right now because Matt, Tish, and I have been working on a new program, and it's got me all fired up and jazzed up to get that out. So I've been working on that, which is why I was a little bit late. I don't think we have any announcements other than I'm not ready to announce the program we're working on, but that's coming. So super excited about that. But other than that, I don't think I have any other announcements. So let's get into it. So I wanted to talk about something that is a problem for a lot of people. And this falls under the guise of setting the perimeter and understanding when compassion should be used versus when it can be a detriment. A lot of times this comes into the form of like agreeing to disagree or tolerance and things of that nature. And this has been coming up a lot in my life lately, and in conversation with a lot of different people. And so I wanted to address it. I don't know if we have to kind of beleaguer the problem, but so this might be a very quick conversation. But the reality is, I think in two parts, society has chosen that we should have universal compassion, which I don't entirely agree with, which I'll get into a little bit later, and that we should be self-effacing in order to be compassionate. And so what I mean by self-effacing, I mean kind of breach our own boundaries in the name of tolerance or in the name of compassion. So first and foremost, universal compassion, I don't believe in. There's no such thing as universal compassion. You can have empathy for humans because they exist and they are human. However, there is a certain point where compassion has to be audited against outcomes, against priorities, against survivability. And I've talked about this quite a lot in regards to your compassion shouldn't outweigh your self-preservation. And I get a lot of hate when I say that because people are like, humans are humans and they need to be loved. And the best way that I can explain universal compassion is that is using cannibals as an example, right? Like there's no common ground between a non-cannibal and cannibal because the non-cannibal is on the menu. And so if you want to be compassionate towards a cannibal, that means that you are going to be at risk of placing you and your people in danger because you want to tolerate that behavior. And so that's a very extreme example. And a lot of people obviously can't relate because they don't know a lot of cannibals. But it does articulate the idea of like, at what point do you stop allowing the person who wants your head on a dinner plate to have access to you, to your people? And at what point do you set the line and say, listen, like, if you want to stay over there and do that, that's cool, but you're not going to come over and eat my family. And so when we talk about universal compassion and universality of morality, that kind of rhymed on accident. So the universal approach of moral compasses, right? The reality is that morality is going to be subjective to different people, right? For instance, and I've talked to Matt about this a lot, like taking a human life for guys that are in the warrior space, if it comes down to you versus me, there's some moral subjectivity there that taking that person's life is not as scary or of a big deal or whatever versus somebody who's never had to be put in that situation. And so there's going to be a higher moral ramification for taking a life. And so when you think about moral justifications, you can't just make this broad brush space and say, all of this is good, all of this is bad. It's really situational. Not to say that morality is subjective, not by any means. However, when creating an objective morality, you have to realize that not everybody is going to share in that objective morality. And that's the real rub, because when you start talking about universal morality, when you start talking about universal compassion, you have to realize that not everybody's going to share in those priorities. Not everybody's going to share in those thought processes. Not everybody's going to see right from wrong the way that you see right from wrong, and it's going to create friction. And so when you're talking about universal compassion, this is why it becomes so important to set your perimeters, why it's so important to make sure that you're on the same playing field ideologically with the people in your space, because when the wolves are at the gate and shit hits the fan, you don't want to be worrying about what side that person is on when you're trying to defend the gate. Are they going to sell you out? Are they so on and so forth? And so when we talk about compassion is one of those things where I think society looks at it from a blue sky mentality, which is as long as everything's going well and nobody's trying to eat somebody else and nobody's trying to kill somebody else or whatever, then we can all be compassionate and care about each other as humans. And then people extrapolate that across their entire ethos. They extrapolate that across their entire ideology, assuming and hoping, and hope is not a plan, that nothing ever goes wrong. Nothing ever is a problem. There's no narcissists in the group. There's no sociopaths in the group. There's no psychopaths in the group. We just assume everybody is well-adjusted and great. And so we have this universal compassion for everybody. And there's a lot of really nasty, evil, dark statistics out there that you can look up. And one of the ones that really speaks volumes is that most sexual assaults, most molestations of children, most child predators happen within the space of the trust circle. There's somebody that they knew, right? There's somebody that they never thought would ever do that. I didn't see that as a problem. I didn't see them doing that in 100 years, in a million years. Came out of left field, right? And that comes from not auditing the different things. And 9 times out of 10, those people then have that experience that, especially the people in the tertiary space, there were signs that they just ignored because they created this universal compassion, this universal trust. And so to inoculate your tribe from that, you need to be auditing the people that are in your circle, and you need to be making sure that your compassion is well aligned and spent on the people that matter, people that are within the boundary and understand the same things, right? Like if I'm going to use a prime example, if I say I hate pedophiles and the only cure for pedophiles is a wood chipper, that I believe that. Like I don't mess with kids. Like I truly believe that. And if somebody in my space is willing to defend the pedophile, then we are not on the same playing field. We are not arguing the same morality. We are not discussing and debating the same construct. And therefore, that person is probably going to be pushed out of my circle pretty quickly. Now, that's an extreme audit piece, but it is a very important one, because if you're in my circle, I would expect to have my kids around your kids, my kids around your people. And so if I hear that, that's a red flag for me of like, oh, so children matter less than somebody's sexual proclivity. That's a problem. And so when you're talking about compassion, how far out do you make that compassionate circle? How far out do you make those excuses for people? Becomes very, very important, especially if you're going to be leading your family. If you're a man of the house, if you want to have the discernment of a leader, judgment calls need to be made quickly and effectively so that your people can be safe. And then beyond that, the construct of tolerance, right? The agree to disagree construct. And I'm a big believer in agree to disagree. However, there's a fine line between agreeing to disagree and tolerating really big problems. And that's where I think society has gotten us stuck, itself stuck over the last several years, is tolerance has now gone to the extreme. We now are being asked to tolerate child mutilation. We're now asked to tolerate, pedophilia. We're asked to tolerate things that are not necessarily normal by historical, probably the last 2,000 years. We're supposed to tolerate, that women can be men and men can be women. And that's just biologically incorrect, right? And we have to participate in fictions, in somebody's imaginary world. And that, I believe, has long-term ramifications to social integrity. And so when we're talking about agree to disagree, again, setting the perimeter is absolutely critical. Are we talking about agree to disagree, a person who's tertiary to your space and you don't really engage with them? Yeah, totally agree to disagree. Like, I'm not going to waste my energy trying to talk a clownfish out of making jokes. Like, I'm not, that's their way. Like, I don't care. Now, if they're going to come and make fun of me and my people, and now we're going to have a problem, right? Because now you're trying to enter my perimeter. I can no longer agree to disagree because you're going to come and demand that I behave a certain way or be accepting of a certain thing, that's not going to fly, right? And one of the things that I talk about is like, there's no common ground with somebody who wants to enslave your people. If their tolerance, if their compassion is do this or else, I want to be able to send a man with a gun to your house to take your children if you don't agree with me. If it's, I want to send a man with a gun to your house because you're not saying what I want you to say or believing what I want you to believe. That's called servitude. That is slavery. That is extortion. That is racketeering. That is a myriad of other problems that when you boil it down, it's just slavery. It's just you reprimanding me on threat of violence and gun to do what you want me to do. Well, at that point, I can't agree to disagree with you because now you want to enslave me. There's no agree to disagree anymore. Now it is action. Now you have to be removed from my space or violence will happen. That's the reality. And so when you're in discussions and you're in debates and you're in relationships and you're trying to build friendships, it is absolutely paramount that you understand the baseline ideology that you're willing to place. That means planting your flag, knowing what you're going to live for, what you're willing to die for. That means setting your boundaries and saying, this is what I'll accept as behavior. This is what I won't accept as behavior. That means understanding what the long-term implications, the extreme implications of whatever is being suggested to you, right? So one of the arguments that I hear a lot in regards to, identity politics, pedophilia, things like that is we'll just create legislation that makes it not okay to speak or whatever, which goes against Constitution and First Amendment, which is freedom of speech. But beyond that, what are they saying? They're saying, I want to put something on the books that says a man with a gun can come to your house and enforce my will upon you on fear of death, loss of freedom, or loss of wages. That's what that means. That's the extreme, right? And anytime I talk to people that are like, oh, I just want to be accepted, they don't think like that. They think it's a piece of paper. They think it's a fine. They think it's this. They don't have extreme thinking. Again, going back to blue sky thinking, they don't have this idea that somebody with a gun may come because they're not used to somebody like me who's like, well, I'm not going to, not because I don't agree with you or whatever, but you're not going to force me, which is a very different thing, right? I may respect that decision if it's my choice, but charity on threat of violence is no longer charity. Respect on threat of violence is no longer respect. That's all fascism. And so that's what we're getting to. We're getting to this place of fascism. And so the only way to circumvent fascism is to have strong, capable, and respectable people stand up and say, no, this is my line. I don't give a fuck what your violence is. I don't care what you think you're going to push on me. Me and my family are going to do our thing. And you don't get the right to tell me anything otherwise. And this is generally when somebody stands up and says that, this is generally where the name calling comes in. You're a bigot, you're a transphobe, you're a fascist, you're this, you're that, whatever. You have to become completely slick to it. You need to just let it wick off your body and not let it land at all, right? Go back to elementary school. I'm rubber, you're glue. Everything that you say bounces off me, sticks to you. Like there's a reason we taught that to our kids for a long time, because it creates a certain social elasticity that allows them to bounce back from hatred and judgment and all this other stuff, while still maintaining that they have their own right to state their agency, to say, this is what I believe, and that's okay. And so as we move forward and in Heroes, like we talk about staying sovereign, this is paramount to staying sovereign. And beyond that, if you're a man or a woman and you're looking to have a mate and you're looking to have kids, you have to realize that if you do not get these things under wraps, right? If you do not understand who you are, what you believe, what your ideology is, what your foundation is, and you go and have a partnership with somebody that maybe doesn't agree or is on, or worse, is the polar opposite of you, you're going to create so much tension for you and your spouse that it's going to end the relationship. And if it doesn't end the relationship, somebody's going to resent somebody, and it's going to fall onto the kids once you have kids, because that's when you're going to have to start to articulate those things so that the children know how to orient themselves in the world. And that's what I see a lot of parents struggling with when they get with partners that don't match. They're trying to figure out how to orient their children in the world, and you have one person who's over the top compassionate, and you have another person that's over the top, stoic, or vice versa. And there's just clash. And so they want to teach the kid to be compassionate, but they don't want to teach the kid to get run over by a train, right? Like, and I mean that socially, like anybody can just tell them what to do. And so as you orient yourself in the world and you start to figure out where you want to go in the world, start to identify those non-negotiables for yourself. Like I mentioned earlier, pedophilia is a non-negotiable for me. You mess with kids and I will end you. Like that is my non-negotiable. I don't care if they put me in prison. I don't care if it's not nice. I don't care. That is my line. You don't fuck with kids. And so knowing that, I am very confident in articulating that. And I'm very cut and dry about it. No, no, no. Anybody that engages with me knows not to broach that subject, because if it's not on the same level, we have nothing in common. Because anybody that would decimate the innocence and purity of a child, I have nothing to do with. I want nothing to do with them. And so you have to start to negotiate with yourself which ones are negotiable, which ones are non-negotiable, where are you planting your flag, and who are you going to be? And I say this because historically, the way that our society has kind of turned itself into is find a tribe and then mold yourself to the tribe. That is wholly incorrect. That is the absolute polar opposite of what you're supposed to do. Find yourself, and then plug yourself into a tribe that matches. Because the reality is most people struggle with identity. Most people struggle with self-consciousness. Most people struggle with doubts and fears, not because of somebody else, but because internally they have not figured out who they are. Now, if you're not entirely sure, start articulating with yourself, like, what things do you know? Right? Like, I'm anti-pedophilia, right? If you're anti-pedophilia, we may connect. But as you go through it, I may say some shit that you don't like. And while we have common ground on, pedophiles are pieces of shit, we may not have common ground on religion or politics, or we might not have common ground. And then you start to navigate away from it. You start to know what things make you uncomfortable, what things don't work for you, what things do work for you. And then you start to find yourself in that, but never let the tribe tell you who you are. Know who you are, and then what can you add to the tribe? And find a tribe that echoes what you believe in yourself, rather than finding a tribe and then becoming a repetitive sheep, right? That's the whole thing. That's what cults are. Cults find people who don't know themselves and then indoctrinate them into a construct that may not really apply to that person, but because they're so weak-willed and they haven't done the work to develop themselves into a thick outer shell, they become pliable. And then the cult can convince them of all manner of atrocities, including murder. They can convince them of suicides. They can convince them all kinds of things. And so really focus on knowing yourself, finding out where your lines are, where your boundaries are, setting that perimeter, and stop letting people make you feel bad for holding that boundary, for saying, no, this is my non-negotiable. If they want to make you feel bad, just disconnect, just walk away. Because there's no way that person actually cares about you. If you're saying, hey, this is a non-negotiable for me, and they're saying, no, that's stupid, you're dumb, like, that's rude, whatever, call you names, they don't care about you. They only care about themselves. So walk away from those people. And so with that, I would end it with that, right? Like, go audit, go make sure you're good to go. Because otherwise you're going to be the one that gets kind of used as a scapegoat. So hope you guys are having a great week. Again, more information will come out on that program shortly. Still working through it with Tish and Matt, making sure we got all the I's dotted, T's crossed. But look forward to that, and see you on the flip side. But yeah, stay sovereign. I know Tish is busy. I know you're on, but if you wanted to add anything, feel free. You're on mute.
Technology challenge. I agree very much to that point of, like, find the group that you fit into, not finding the group that fits you, right? Very much that piece of, like, know who you are. What do you want? What do you don't want? Like, I advocate a lot for people, know what you don't want, because that will help you guide into, like, well, what do you want in life? Oh, I don't know. What don't you want? What's a hard line for you?
Yeah.
If you know what some of those hard lines are, then very much so you can be like, okay, well, I don't want that group for sure because they believe in that or they do that. So I don't want that. But then, what do I want? What, like, to your point, what do you bring to the table? Okay, well, that's some cool things too. Like, what are your special skills? What makes you unique? Parts of things you should be able to answer for yourself. You want to be a part of a tribe. A tribe is about, sharing sharing, right? So not just taking. So what do you bring? What do you share of yourself? What do you give? What do you contribute? Instead of just being a taker and be like, well, I like this tribe because I get cool perks. Okay, well, what are you giving for that perk? So just a lesson that people need to learn for themselves, that is an ever going process, but really certainly one that should be a solid audit. You should at least have a solid concept of like, what don't you want? What do you want? I definitely want this kind of people in my life. I definitely don't want this kind of people in my life. Okay, well, so then you start to find the middle ground. And then you test it out. Does this group fit me? Okay, I got into this group. That's great. Has some things I like, has some things I don't like. Can I live with it? Can I not live with it? And then can I contribute? What do I get back? And then deciding if that's the good fit. And maybe over time it changes and you're like, okay, this no longer serves me. I need something different, rather than stagnating and just being like, well, I'm here. Like, I guess I'm here forever. Maybe, maybe not.
I think there's two things you said there that I wanted to highlight. And one is like, what makes you unique? And I've talked to a lot of people and they're like, nothing, I'm not unique at all. Everybody's unique. All
Absolutely.
relationships are reciprocal, and there's a reason that you exist that is very unique, because nobody's lived your life but you. And so all your experiences cultivate a character and a persona that nobody else has. And you're going to have knowledge that nobody else has. But you just got to find out where that sits and what that looks like. And then two, the point of being in tribes and groups, personal groups, like your very personal groups, like friends group and family groups, yeah, they're meant to be long lasting, but you also have to be able to audit and say this group isn't serving me anymore, right? Especially if it's like a business group or a mentorship or something of that nature. At some point you may level up from that group and you may not need it, and it's okay to walk away from it. It's not meant to be a lifelong membership to, and that goes back to like knowing your purpose. Like, why are you part of that group? Is it to learn something specific? Well, once you learn that, you move on. If it's to find a community that you can click with and find the family tribe that you have for life, okay, well, then you better be very, very clear on what you don't want and what you want to develop that, and what your negotiables are and non-negotiables are, because you're not going to mesh with everybody 100%, right? My best friends, we argue constantly about stuff because we see things differently. And Tish knows this because I argue with her all the time. We just see things differently, but it's out of respect. We're arguing to learn, not to convince, not to preach, not to say, hey, you're dumb or whatever. It's I don't agree with that. And from that, I've changed some of my positions. They've changed some of their positions. Some of the times we do get to a point where we're like, listen, I don't agree, right? Like, I believe in God. My buddy's an atheist. We argue about theology all the time, and we enjoy those conversations. We're not trying to convince one to hate God and one to love God. Like, we're just seeing where things match and like what they look like. And what we found over many years is like, we actually feel the same way, but what I call God, he calls the universe, or he calls this. So it's that we see the same things, but we just see it just a shade different through a very different lens. But out of respect, we're able to agree to disagree on different things, or communicate without belittling and berating. And so knowing yourself is absolutely critical. And so, as we move through, especially with heroes, like, that's probably one of the best lessons that you could have, is like, how do you learn yourself? Audit yourself, push yourself into positions where it's uncomfortable or with people you don't know or whatever. And you're going to find very, very quickly, I don't like that guy because he creeps me out. I don't like that woman because she's weird. That person talks too much. That person doesn't talk enough. That person's boring, right? And then you take that, and a lot of people are like, oh, you shouldn't judge people. You should very much judge people because you're being judged. But that judgment isn't prejudice. You should be prejudiced.
Right.
That's the difference. And we've conflated the two. There's judgment, which is you did something that I didn't like, and now I'm judging you for that action because I didn't like it. Versus prejudice, that person's blonde and I'm sure they're stupid. That's prejudice, right? But if you go and you're like, oh, I expected them to be dumb because they're blonde, but they're not. They're really smart. Great. Or, well, they're fucking dumb. Like, that's not a prejudice. I gave them the opportunity. They failed to use it, right? But then you can take that information back and be like, well, why did I feel like that person was creepy? Better not do that. Why did I feel like that person was dumb? Better not do that. Why did I feel comfortable with this person? I should replicate that. Why does that person make me feel warm? I should replicate that. So that's what judgment really is for. That's what the human brain is wired for.
Right.
Labeling and judging things so that we know what not to do and what to do. And with this whole universal compassion thing, which I talked about early on, it's kind of robbed us of that skill set. It's robbed us of the power of our brains, because we're telling everybody's, viable and valid in life because they exist. It's like, I don't agree with that. Some people are shitty fucking people. And yeah, they have a reason why, and they have choices or whatever. I don't care. If you're shitty to my people, I want nothing to do with you. You keep it up, I'm going to knock you out. That's how I see things. Like, I'll give you the chance and I'll give you the opportunity, but if you squander it by being a dick, you're just a dick. I don't care why. Right? The same way that if I'm a dick to somebody, they're not going to give a shit if I had a bad day or whatever. This is why I also don't let my bad days be taken out on people, because I don't want them to have that image of me. But nobody cares. Be a good person. If you're a bad person, you don't get compassion from me. You don't get a, oh, poor baby from me. You get a, hey, family, stay the fuck away from that guy because I got a bad feeling about him and I don't know what it is, but it's not good. And I'm not inviting the snake in just to get bit. Okay? I don't do that. And that's the discernment of a leader. Like, if you give off the vibes of a snake, I'll just mind my P's and Q's around you. I'll make sure to just kind of keep a watchful eye on you. I'm not going to rob you of opportunities. I'll give you a chance to earn it, but I'm going to watch you harder than somebody that I'm real warm with, that I got a good feeling about. That's human nature. Stop trying to circumvent it on this idea of like tolerance and inclusion, and fuck that. Listen to your intuition. And the more you know yourself, the better that intuition gets. Period.
Absolutely. Yep.
All
All right. Well, I kind of missed the beginning. Did you say what we've been working on lately?
I said we're working on something, but I wasn't ready to announce it yet.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, we're working on something.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I was late by a couple minutes because I was working on that.
Okay, cool.
Like, I logged in, got my stuff set up, and I was on the call, but I had my mic muted and the recording wasn't started and all that because I was on another screen working on it. So
yeah, it's all good.
I'm excited.
All
I
right.
shot the video. I shot the video announcing it this morning too.
Okay.
So that'll go out
Okay.
in the next couple of days when I'm ready.
Nice.
So,
well, and for all the geeks in the world, today's May 4th. Oh.
May the 4th be with you.
Oh. Yeah. So, and if you took it one step further for the celestials, like, tomorrow is a huge full moon, lunar eclipse, blah, 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 changing in the world, 5/5, whatever. So, yeah, like lots of forces being with you.
Mercury's in the microwave. Jupiter's in the
all that good stuff. Absolutely.
Mars is in the lemonade.
Yep.
Okay. Just making sure.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Well,
praise the Lord. We're breathing again, so it's all good.
That's where I'm at. I just feel grateful to be awake.
Right?
I'm in pain. I'm in a lot of pain right now because of my neck and back.
Yeah.
I even thought about taking this from my bed, which is where I've pretty much been set up with my heating pad and stuff. But I was like, nah, I don't want to be unprofessional. I'll show up for my people. So
nice.
I'm over here drugged up.
Glad you did, and then go crawl back into bed and put a heating pad on it.
Yeah, I intend to, along with working on dirt. You'll be fine. So, well, thanks everyone.
All right.
Appreciate everybody joining. Talk soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.